Hello and welcome. My name is Waldo, and in this video, I'll be continuing the Cummins swap into this GMC C3500HD. I'll be working on getting the Dodge radiator and intercooler, as well as the GM AC condenser mounted on the radiator support. Lastly, I may end up needing to fabricate my own radiator fan shroud because the Dodge fan shroud may not fit. If you're new to the channel, I have a playlist of all the videos on this Cummins swap in order from the very beginning. If you remember from my last video, I mounted the engine back as far as I could so I would have room to fit the radiator, intercooler, and AC condenser while using the belt-driven radiator fan on the Cummins. This is the video where I have to perform some magic to make these fit. There's undoubtedly going to be a lot of cutting, fabricating, and welding to adapt these to the existing radiator support. But before I do any of that, I'd like to address a YouTube comment. Jeff LeBlanc writes, "What's with the clown rims? It looks like a clown truck." Jeff, your comment helps with the YouTube algorithm, so thank you for that. And although maybe it wasn't the nicest way of saying it, I do sort of agree with you, so let's take care of that. Well, I didn't intend for this to turn into an unboxing video, but here we are. $200 later, we have a set of China's finest. 4 polished stainless steel wheel simulators. Center caps. These are for the rear wheels, and these are for the front. I would imagine they used the cheapest alloy of stainless steel they could get, but they do look pretty decent, at least for now. Alright, so it looks like this will fit over this, and I'm going to line this hole up with the valve stem. So something like this. And then the hubcap has 3 holes where I need to screw these 3 sort of nuts on. I'll go ahead and screw these 3 adapters on. Give me a little tool to tighten them up with. This goes on here. And they also give you little decals to put on the center cap. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I might leave these off. We'll see.
A little while later.
Well, there it is. Looking pretty good for a clown truck. Alright, so I'm going to start by removing bits of the radiator support that don't need to be here for now. I may add them back later, but they'll probably need to be modified in order to add them back later. But in any case, yeah, let's get these things out of here. It's going to make my job a lot easier, because I'm going to have to cut out large portions of this to make everything fit. Alright, so this is what I'm working with here. So it looks like the radiator it's actually a little over 4 inches of space, and it only needs 2 3/4. So I'm in pretty good shape here. My goal is to have the radiator to be about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch away from the fan blades. So for the most part, the radiator is going to fit in this spot. The only thing I'm going to have to modify is this thing right here and this thing right here need to be cut out, because the space is too narrow in those spots. Now let's see how the intercooler fits in here. So I guess just one thing to note is the input and the output of the intercooler, they go around the radiator and they stick out. So I'm not going to be able to stick this all the way in, but you'll be able to get an idea of where it's going to fit. That looks like that's approximately centered, and you can see how much of this I'm going to have to cut out. I'm going to have to cut out huge amounts of the radiator support for this to fit. I might also need this to be a little bit lower, so I might also have to cut out a little bit more down here. If you could hold that there for me. Alright, so I drew a little bit of an outline here with chalk around the intercooler, so I know how much I need to cut out. Alright, so with these two side bits removed, I think that'll make it easier for me to get to this bottom piece here and the same one on the other side. I was having a little trouble getting in and cutting all of that out. Actually, you know what? This is going to be in the way. But other than that, this thing's looking pretty good. Alright, let's try this intercooler out and see how it fits. Hey, that. Looks great. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And as for the radiator, so yeah, I'm still going to have to cut out some material down here, and then I'm also going to have to cut out a little bit of this so that the mounting tab will fit in there.
Much later.
So I've done a ton of cutting on this thing, and I am about ready to do what I hope is my final test fit of the radiator and the intercooler to see if they fit. I've cut out all sorts of stuff around here, here, and the same thing on the other side to get it to fit. There's been a bit of trial and error. The most recent thing I did is I cut out this and this so that the intercooler can fit farther back. So let's give it a try and see how it turns out. So the intercooler needs to come in first from the front. It's about like that. And then I can slide the radiator in from the top back. And they kind of just slide into place. That is really close right there to where they need to be. I think they might come up a little bit farther, or at least the radiator might come up a little bit farther. So yeah, this is great news. So I think I'm ready to put these in the truck, and then I can try the test fit. I'll get the radiator in place first, based on the position of the radiator fan, and then I can get the intercooler in and finalize the position of that. And then I'll worry about the AC condenser last. I'm sure I will have enough room for it at this point. If I get this fan removed, I should have enough room to slide the radiator right in here. Now very carefully reinstall the fan without damaging the radiator fins. Okay, there we go. That is beautiful. So I cut up some steel to use as lower radiator mounts. Really just as simple as a piece of 1-inch pipe and a piece of 1/8 inch steel plate that I cut up with a hole saw, or 2 hole saws actually. So let's get these pieces welded together. There we go. And there we have it. Alright, so I have the radiator support ground down here and here, which is approximately where the lower radiator mounts are going to be welded on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit these lower radiator mounts onto the rubber isolators of the radiator, lower the radiator into place, and then, you know, they'll go approximately there and there, and I will tack weld them in. Then I can remove the radiator and then fully weld them. I have about 5/8 of an inch of space between the fan and the radiator, so let's get these lower radiator fan supports welded in place. Well, they're there. The support's welded in place. Alright, so I went ahead and fabricated this mounting tab here. So it's going to be welded to the radiator support like that, and it's got a nut welded to it there. So the bolt that goes through this radiator mount here will be able to thread right into it. Alright, the radiator is mounted in its final position. If I go ahead and pull the radiator out, now I can try mounting the intercooler. Well, before I mount the intercooler, I'm going to need to get rid of these fender linings, at least the corners there, because they are in the way of the inlet and outlet of the intercooler. Yeah, the one on this side is pretty rusty anyway, so I gotta take care of that. The other side isn't too bad, but still. Well, with these fender linings cut out, let's get the intercooler and the radiator in and see what they look like. Alright, for the lower intercooler mounts, I actually have these brackets from the Dodge, and it was really easy to remove them because they simply bolt right on. Now, these rubber isolators go right into this hole like so, and it's a perfect fit. What I'm probably going to do with this is I'll probably cut off these mounting tabs and then figure out a way to weld this to the radiator cross member in the right position to mount the intercooler. Well, I made some marks where I need to do some cutting, so let's pull this intercooler back off and cut away. All right, so I have these little intercooler brackets just sitting here in place. There's about a 1/4 inch of space in between the intercooler and the radiator, so that's exactly what I want. So let's get these things welded in place. Now, before I go any farther, note that the intercooler has these huge tabs sticking out here for the upper mounts. Now, I just want to fit the grill onto the truck here to make sure that these are not going to be in the way, because if they are, I'm going to have to cut these off and, I don't know, fabricate something custom, or even more custom than it already is. So yeah, let's get the grill on here and see how it looks. It's really close, but it looks like it's going to be okay. So I fabricated a couple upper intercooler brackets. I basically used the same thing as I did for the radiator. I used 1/8 inch by 2 inch angle iron, and I welded a 6mm nut to the back of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and weld this on. I just blew through a little bit because it's too hot. Whoops. I should probably let it cool down a little bit. Up next, let's take a look at the AC condenser. So this is a GM AC condenser that's actually intended for this vehicle. I guess I should mention that this vehicle did not come with air conditioning, so I'm going to be retrofitting it. Now I'm going to try to mount this GM AC condenser to the Dodge intercooler using the Dodge mounts that were intended for a Dodge AC condenser. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to mount it somewhere around here so that these lines can go here underneath this mount, but kind of above this here. I think I might save the mounting of this AC condenser for a separate video. In that video, I'll probably mount this, run all the lines, and do the retrofit all in the same video. That'll probably be a better package. And also, it's not really critical that I get this installed until next summer when it starts to get hot again. So one interesting thing to note here is that this end of the AC condenser doesn't actually have any mounting brackets or anything like that. It has this and this, which are two pieces of metal welded onto the AC condenser, and I assume that these have something to do with mounting it, but I don't actually know how this is supposed to mount. So if you have one of these GM trucks with air conditioning, let me know down in the comments how this is supposed to mount. In any case, all I need to know for this video is that I need to cut a little bit more out of the radiator support, and that'll be helpful for when I do all of the painting on the truck, and I do want to coat this. I'll be able to have this all welded up and finalized so that I can coat it and be done with it. Up next, it is time for me to work on the fan shroud. Now, the engine actually sits about 2 inches too low for me to use the Dodge fan shroud, so I'm gonna have to make my own. So I actually just picked up a 4x8 sheet of 5000 series marine grade aluminum, and I'm going to cut it up and weld it together into the shape of a fan shroud. So I guess the first step is to pull this radiator out of here, and I'm going to fabricate the bits that actually attach to the radiator. And then as for the other bits that actually fit around the fan, I'll do that when the radiator is in place here. So let's get to work. Well, that was a pretty easy way to cut this strip off. This is a 1.5 inch by 48 inch strip. Just gonna do another one of these. So I'm going to start by welding together the part that attaches to the radiator itself. So I'm going to be using the Hobart Handler 210 today, and this is the Spool Runner 100 spool gun for aluminum welding. So I got some 5356 035 wire in here, and we're going to see how this works. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tack it together with the spool gun, and then I'll use the TIG welder to fully weld it up after that. Each side of the radiator has 2 mounting tabs that are bolted in place, so let me get these things welded on now. So the fan shroud is located and held in place on the bottom by these 2 slots here in the radiator. The fan shroud is supposed to have a couple tabs sticking out that go through these slots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a similarly sized hole in the fan shroud, and then I'm going to take this little piece of flat bar, stick it through the fan shroud, and weld it on the inside. And what that'll do is by having the weld bead on the inside, it'll allow the fan shroud to sit flush against this mounting tab. I ended up getting these slots cut out by drilling a bunch of holes and then using a jigsaw to clean it up. So I've gone ahead and installed what I've made so far into the truck, and with this I can mark exactly where the center of the fan is. Next I need to make the circular part of the fan shroud. I've gone ahead and measured the diameter of this, which is 24 inches. From that I can multiply 24 times pi, and I know that the circumference is about 75.4 inches. So I've gone ahead and cut out these 2 pieces of aluminum, and once I butt weld them together and form them into a circle, these will be the exact right size for the circular part of the fan shroud. Well, I was able to rig something together here with a board and 4 nails just to kind of hold this together so I can weld it. Alright, so I have the circular bit laid out exactly where I need it to be so that the fan will be centered in it. And then I have these 2 plates fabricated so that these are where they're going to be. And now all I need to do is just mark in here and here so that I know where to cut. I'll cut these out with a jigsaw, and then I can really just weld all this stuff together. Yeah, that works pretty well. I'm using a kind of a regular old jigsaw that's meant for wood, but I have some Bosch metal cutting blades meant for aluminum specifically, and Yeah, it works great. I have really good control over it. Well, here these plates are laid out. I guess I'm going to try welding it off of the radiator, so I'll flip this thing over and weld them from the inside. I think it's looking pretty good so far. So up next, I got to cut out this piece here and this piece up here because those are going to be in the way of the fan blades. The next step is to tack the circular part of the fan shroud in place. Now that my aluminum TIG rods just came in, I'm going to try using my TIG welder for this. Specifically the Miller Multimatic 220 AC/DC. Now the AC part is important because AC, alternating current, is required for TIG welding aluminum. Before I go any farther, I'm going to fit this into the vehicle with the fan to make sure it all fits, make sure I got the measurements right, all that stuff. I'd hate to go and fully weld this up and have a beautiful, or hopefully beautiful looking fan shroud and then find out that it doesn't fit. Yeah, so I got it installed and look at this. This is beautiful. It's supposed to have about an inch of clearance around the whole thing, and it looks like that's about right. So it's going really well so far. So I guess I'm going to pull this thing out. I gotta add a piece here, same thing on the bottom, and then weld this puppy up. Alright, I have moved all my stuff down into the basement. Waldo, resist the temptation to make a political joke. In any case, it's nice and cool down here, plus I don't have to worry about rain or wind or anything like that. So I went ahead and added a couple more pieces here and here to fully seal this thing up, and yeah, so I just have to fully weld it. So previously I was using a 3 30-second tungsten to do this welding, and I was also using 3 30-second rod, but I think that was kind of like taking a big hammer and I couldn't be very precise with it. So I think I'm going to downgrade to a 1/16 inch tungsten, and I'm also going to use 1/16 inch filler rod for this. And I hope that this is going to give me a lot more precision in terms of being able to weld this up without burning through or anything like that. Cue the music. Let's get this thing welded up. Yeah, so I'm starting with the bottom here because the top is going to be a lot more visible, and hopefully by the time I get to the top, my welds will actually look good. But I don't know. We're going to see what happens. How hard could it be? Yeah, so here's the finished result. The welds didn't turn out quite as pretty as I wanted them to be, but as it turns out, TIG welding aluminum is quite a bit harder than TIG welding steel is. But in any case, it should be good enough to hold. The welds on the top really aren't that bad looking. Some of the welds on the bottom, on the other hand, are quite ugly. And here it is. It fits well, the fan spins. What more could I ask for? Up next, I guess I'll pull the engine and transmission back out of this truck and then finish up the bodywork so I can get it in the shop and paint it. On the dyno front, I just noticed a couple more hydraulic issues. For one, I expect the power steering pump is leaking hydraulic fluid into the crankcase, so expect a video on that at some point. I just want to give a sincere thanks to those of you who have used my Amazon affiliate links. It really helps to support the channel. For those of you who shop on Amazon and would like to support the channel, all you have to do is click on my affiliate link in the description below and make your purchase as normal. I earn a small but meaningful commission, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to leave your comments and questions down below.